many leaders are starting to feel that the term digital transformation is being used so widely to cover such a broad range of topics that it's actually starting to become unhelpful. The reality is, though, that most organisations will have at least some element of digital transformation within their strategy, because it's becoming increasingly important for organisations to recognise the opportunity that digital presents and be able to apply that within their business context for various reasons. But do we really understand what digital transformation actually means? There are some fundamental common components behind every digital transformation initiative. So in this talk today, I'm going to talk a little bit around the drivers, why it's so important for organisations, and some of those common attributes of digital transformation that we should all be starting to think about how we build into our transformational initiatives. So what is this thing, digital transformation? If you were to Google it, I think you would find a whole host of different articles, publications, videos and presentations on the topic that would all talk about different aspects. From one perspective, someone will talk about the application of digital technology to optimize business process and improve performance. Some will talk about the customer experience and then using digital technology to enhance the customer experience. A lot will talk about culture and how digital transformation is a cultural change and it's a behavioural change. I think the reason we all struggle with some of these definitions is it actually encompasses all of them. It encompasses the people, process and technology elements of an organisation. And I think the Harvard Business Review really summed it up quite nicely when it described digital transformation as adapting an organisation's strategy and structures to capture opportunities enabled through digital technology. And the reason I really like that definition is actually because it takes it from a use of technology to automate stuff conversation and moves it to an opportunity-based conversation. Because for me, digital transformation is all about the opportunities. It's all about what digital technology and modern technologies and capabilities can do for an organisation to enable them to optimize their customer experience and their own performance. But that brings us on quite nicely, I think, to when we think about what are the drivers for digital transformation, because we don't do digital for the sake of digital. I think there's a lot of commentators that will say you don't do technology for the sake of technology. Technology shouldn't be a solution looking for a problem. But actually, when it comes to digital transformation, the problems are major meta problems in the world. They're not small organizational problems. And I think that's why sometimes we have this challenge, because organizations are trying to solve their own internal problem. At the same time, we have these huge global trends going on. And when we look at the global trends, they are the drivers for our digital transformation. So we start off really, I think, with the whole pace of change around technology and the pace of digital within the world. If we think back, the first iPhone came out in 2007. That was only 15 years ago. The first iPad was 2010. This is not a long term as we think about duration and we think about the pace of change. And change has accelerated from there because people are taking those technologies and creating new business models and new opportunities out of those technologies, which then drives further change and further opportunities and further investment. And this cycle is getting shorter and shorter, and we're seeing more and more innovation happening in the technology space. Some of the big business model changes we're seeing at the moment is the use of platforms, thinking about Amazon, thinking about Uber and those sorts of capabilities. No longer do you need to be a major retailer to set up a web presence and be able to market your goods to the citizen now, or the service to the consumer. You can now, as a small retailer, as a small producer, leverage these platforms to sell your goods directly to the consumer. And this is hugely disruptive for the whole retail sector, as we're seeing, and COVID and all those other pandemics and the things that are going on has really driven part of that change as well. But it's been going on for quite a while now. The other new business model that we're starting to see come through is a social business model, where we're seeing communities of people coming together, and this is predominantly around knowledge and intellectual property rights and those sorts of markets. But we're seeing that as starting to disrupt these capabilities around consulting, around art and literature and those sorts of elements where communities can come together. But as these technologies are coming through, we're actually seeing a huge change in expectation, both from a consumer and an internal staff perspective. These platforms and these capabilities are enabling a personalized service to the consumer, far outstripping everything that we've seen before. And through this personalization, it's driving a faster on-demand cycle. People have this expectation now that they will be prompted for the next best thing. They will be prompted for ideas of what they should be doing. And as they're prompted, they should be getting instant feedback on whether those ideas are achievable and actually can be delivered. The internal staff are still asking for the same thing as well. They know as a citizen, as a consumer, they can get those services themselves. They can go online, they can place their order, and they can get that instant response there. And they want the same thing internally. If they know they want a piece of technology, they can order it from Amazon and get it within a couple of days. Why does it take weeks for an internal IT team to do the same thing? So that is driving an expectation, and it's driving a change. Digital literacy is growing, and although in New Zealand we still have quite a significant digital divide, there is a growing consumer base around digital that has an expectation that they will do their business online. And as we've seen through lockdowns and travel restrictions and those sorts of things, it's becoming more and more important to people that they're able to do their business online in the way that is convenient and suitable for them. So what are we actually trying to get out of this? This isn't about trying to put your market online. It's not about putting your shop on the internet. It's not about simple automation of your processes. We're actually looking at how do we actually position organizations strategically and structurally to take advantage of digital opportunities. That's going back to that Harvard Business Review definition. So as we think about it in those terms, what we actually then start to realize is what are the components that we need to enable that. The first part of it, though, is it has to be about the consumer. It has to be about the customer, because we do things for customers. We do things because somebody wants to consume those services. But actually, it's understanding what are the components of the customer experience and how do you actually manage those expectations and deliver to those expectations. Across all of your consumers now, there is an expectation you're going to be operating safely, securely, and performant. And it's those components that actually are driving trust. So this isn't just about how do I attract more people to my website, because it's equally applicable to government departments, to any charities and those sorts of elements, because we're seeing an increasing connection between your ability to do the basics right and look like you know what you're doing digitally, to the level of trust that the consumer and your customers have in you as an organization. And that level of trust is then driving engagement. So even as a government department, if you want to be driving strong engagement and a strong conversation with the customer and the citizen, you actually need to be doing it digitally, and you have to be doing it in a good way that enables that trust and engagement with the citizen. Part of as well what we want to drive through this, and one of the components, is actually enabling increased performance of our organizations. Investing in digital technology and these digital capabilities, it's not cheap. And part of the management of this cost base is becoming increasingly important for organizations. If you're an organization that's struggling with legacy and you've got a high cost base with lots of manual systems and those sorts of elements, trying to suddenly conjure up a whole bunch of money so that you can innovate and you can do these things for your customers is actually quite difficult. You actually need new investment, or you need to optimize processes and find opportunities to reduce and manage cost and your resource allocation to free up resource to enable you to start to transform into this new world. And this is a juggling act that a lot of organizations are struggling with at the moment, because reality is most organizations don't have a pool of money sitting around waiting for this sort of stuff. They're actually having to manage their operating costs at the same time they're trying to move into this new world. Now, part of that is how do you optimize the performance of your employee? And there's two components of that. One is around the automation of processes so that you can actually free up your employees to do some of this transformation work, or to do things differently, or to invariably free up money to go and do something differently. But the other part of that, though, is that your employee are one of the best sources you will have on where your process waste is, where the opportunities are, where digital technology could actually improve the performance of your organization. And actually exposing these opportunities and ideas and encouraging collaboration across your organization will start to enable that change, and it will start to drive the digital transformation, and actually sharing those customer experiences and your internal staff experiences are quite important for the sources of information for what you're trying to do. Because ultimately one of the elements around here is getting that transparency of cost. So in the old world of large long-term digital projects or technology projects, they were largely capex based. They had long cost tails, and because of that, they were actually quite easy to control financially. You got a big bucket of money at the start, you spent that money to build something, and then you had a rarely regular bill to maintain and deliver that system. As we've moved into this world of constant change and constant adaptability, what we're actually starting to see is a real struggle of organizations trying to keep control over that cost. What my experience is showing is that as you start to move into cloud and you move into that operating based model, unless you start to think about your internal operating model, your project delivery cycle will stick with that capex based model, and it will have a long lead time, and it will onboard costs quite quickly. But actually, because it's used to that slow pace of change, it will offboard costs very slowly. That will drive up your baseline, it will drive up your cost profile, and you will struggle then to find resources to actually do anything else. So gaining that transparency over cost is vitally important for any adaptable organization, or any organization that is looking to increase the pace of change, because only through that you will start to get a handle on what you're doing and where your money is going. And the same for your resources, because you need to start to improve to be able to understand change and start to adapt to any change in the environment. You need to understand what are your people, where are your resources going, and what are my main cost drivers at the moment. Because then as you start to think about change, you can rapidly see what's going on in your environment and what the impact of that change will be. Because part of the driver here is about making better decisions. Now, all of these digital processes and all of these sort of adaptable capabilities, they create data. They will create data around your organization. They will create data around your processes. They will create data around your staff, your customers, and a whole load of other things. Now, this data is a monumental opportunity for organizations. It is huge, because actually what it enables is improved rapid decision making. But not only it enables rapid decision making, it enables rapid feedback on those decisions. So actually you can find out very quickly whether you've got it right or wrong. And the data here about an organization is, for me, it's one of those key foundation process elements of any digital transformation, is getting the data and insights across your organization on how you're performing, what you're doing, and actually how things work in your organization. And through that, then you enable rapid knowledge and evidence-based decision making that is at the heart of any digital transformation. Because ultimately what we're trying to strive for here is an adaptable organization that is able to take opportunities. We're not looking for an organization that is everything's digital and all of our services are online and everything's wonderful. What we're actually trying to build is an organization that is enabled to identify, look at the impact of opportunities, assess and make decisions rapidly, and take advantage of those opportunities. That is at the heart of what we're trying to do here. And I think when we think about it in those terms, then you can start to understand why there isn't one definition of what an organization is doing that we can talk about within that is a digital transformation. So if you're an organization that's struggling with a 40-year-old mainframe system that drives most of your processes, digital transformation for you is simply moving off of that legacy system and moving to something that is more maintainable and resilient, and actually is easier to maintain and automate some of your activities. It's not moving to this future focused adaptable organization yet. There's a whole load of work before you get there. So for you, it's a simple technology transformation piece. It is, I won't say as simple as that, but it is that. For others, it's starting as you've got that. It's then starting to explore opportunities. It's starting to engage with your staff. It's starting to think about, now we've got that process and those opportunities in place, how do we actually take advantage of it, and how do we build for the future? But it does encompass the people, process and technology elements. And this is quite important for me, I think, because when we think about it being a continuum and a journey that an organisation will be on from a digital perspective, our people are on that same journey. As I said previously, if you went to your people in 2006 and asked, what are your requirements about our future customer need? Not many would have spoken about the need for being able to support mobile platforms and those sorts of elements, because the reality is that technology hadn't hit mainstream yet. And similarly, if you're on a journey where your staff are struggling with a legacy system that really doesn't empower and enable them, asking for them requirements, what you're actually going to get is the requirements they had 5 years ago. Their requirements at the time will be, I just need a system that enables me to do my work a little bit better, that I can change my process when I need to, and those sorts of elements. They're not going to give you requirements for this future-focused, customer-centric organisation. So people have to come on that journey as well, and your processes have to come on that journey as well, because part of this is an iterative journey that your organisation will go on, adapting and building your capability to be able to support and take advantage of opportunities enabled through digital technology. So when it comes down to it, the whole goal of digital transformation is about building an organisation. It is about building an adaptive organisation, the people, process and technology to support adaptation so they can actually deliver a customer-centric service and cope with the demands that a modern technology-enabled world is actually driving. I'm going to talk about this more as we go forward. I will produce a few more videos and we'll talk a little bit more on different topics related to digital transformation. Thank you very much for your time listening today. Thank you.